I heard your
We are live.
good evening, everyone, and welcome to CLS Conversations. Today, we start our first conversation of the evening with Mr. Ankur Bisen. Hi, sir. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Ritu. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure equally as well.
The book we're going to be talking about today is called Wasted. It's a topic that is should be actually close to all of our hearts, but unfortunately, yeah, that book. Unfortunately, we don't talk about it as much as we should. So here we are trying to make a little change. Mr. Bisen is very illustrious in his education. He also holds a degree from the University of Cambridge, but has spent over 2 decades in the management industry. Now, from management, he spent a lot of time during his consultancy as well as while he was working with a startup for the Tatas, doing a lot of research on issues and opportunities relating to affordable housing, agriculture, food clusters, resource recovery, and rural consumption, and their relationship with sanitation in India. And that's what I think laid the foundation for his book, Wasted. I had the opportunity to read a little bit of the book before I got this opportunity to chat with him today. And what there was a line that really struck me where he says that the silent acquiescence of the Indian society towards the issue of sanitation, is this pretense or is this ignorance? And then he goes on to talk about how we as a society and a people are constantly oscillating between this pretense and ignorance and finding no real way to live a cleaner life, really. Before we get into a discussion about what sanitation is, why he chose to write about something that was so obscure, the first thing that caught my attention was the cover of your book. That photograph has to have a story. Let's start at the cover. What is the story behind that picture that you've used as the cover of your book?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I
Now,
audible?
yes, now you ask.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the publisher and I were discussing about the book. We wanted to make it symbolic. We wanted to make it not literal. We're talking about ways. We wanted the book cover to be inviting rather than to be graphic,
Right.
and something a visual that can show contradiction in our lives. And I
Mhm.
think this cover represents that contradiction where you have a you have a young child happily sort of running over a landfill, and beneath her feet is a dangerous power keg of emissions. It's a landfill. It's all kinds of waste, and she's just happily running over it. So I think when we saw this image, we thought that this is what the book is all about.
Apologies about that. Looks like we're having some connectivity issues. I'm sure Mr. Hussain will be right back. Hi, sir. Good to have you back. We lost you there for a
Hi,
second.
sorry, I think there is some connection issue. But yeah, so now I just repeat if for the benefit of everyone that
Sure.
we just wanted to convey this image which makes the book inviting because we never had any audience in mind that is specific. It's not a book that is targeted only to the policymakers or only to the people who are involved in this industry. We wanted to tell this story to everyone. Anybody who can read should appreciate what problem we are facing and how to get out of it, and to get that mass connect. I think this cover picture was just the right cover picture to sort of convey the spirit of the book, and that's why this cover.
That's very interesting. Personally, I thought it was an absolutely stunning photograph, so kudos to whoever took it. Coming to the subject matter of the book itself, the book revolves around the issue of sanitation. How did the thought of writing a book on this subject occur to you? How did you build on it? What kind of research went into it? And how long did it take you to get from primary research to publishing?
Sure. So I've spent a lot of time in management consulting, about almost 12, 13 years of my 20 years of professional life. I've been a consultant. Now, what consulting does is that it provides you, it trains your brain to seek method in the madness,
Right.
and to sort of unravel questions like onion peel and say, how do you solve this problem? We work on diverse areas, and it is the methodology, it is this entire conditioning that happens to your brain, that you start to sort of look at this problem in different pieces and say, how can I sort of, what are the solutions to each of these problems, and what is a big picture that look like? That's primarily been the sum and substance of my career journey. Now, during the course of the journey, I ended up sort of spending a lot of time on issues like affordable housing. I spent some time on resource recovery. I spent some time on retail, and somewhere some connect always went into sanitation in some form or the other, be it recycling, be it reuse, be it resource recovery, be it informal living. And then I started to sort of apply that consulting hat and say that, can I then look at this issue from how a management consultant would look at this issue? Just try to unravel the question into smaller pieces and try to address each piece separately and see what story emerges. So I started to write the first words that I wrote uh, were in 2014, January of 2014. And when I started to write, I never had a book in my mind. It was more about answering this question yourself. You can say it hobby, you can say just a curiosity, that how do I solve this problem if I have to solve it? And one thing led to the other. So 2014 became 2015, 2015 became 2016, and the story started to unfold in many ways. And then I took some guidance from people. I've cited them in the book, who've been a great support. And sort of they said that, why don't you take it to its logical conclusion? I think you have a book at hand, and I think it's not been looked at from a perspective of the dimensions of caste, the dimensions of urban planning, the dimensions of resource recovery. And I think then I just sort of decided to sort of take it to its logical conclusion. And it was 2018 when Pan Macmillan sort of agreed to graciously to sort of publish this book. They liked the entire concept. So it took me about 5 years from the first word to getting the book in hand.
Wow. That's quite some commitment, I must say. Congratulations,
Uh,
really, for putting this out
yeah,
there. Thank you.
yeah. No, no, it's been a journey of self discovery, and I think the only thing I keep telling, I'm a first time author. I used to write articles, I still do in some publications, but as an author, it's if you are thinking about writing non-fiction, I think the only uh, tip that I can give is you need to be diligent. You can't complete it in one day or 2 days or 3 days or whatever. You need to have a commitment. It's a tremendously rewarding and rewarding in the sense mentally satisfying experience. It's a lot of catharsis that happens. It becomes your window to whatever is happening and how you want to express it, but it needs a lot of commitment to stay the course. And if you enjoy it, you don't mind the commitment. So frankly, if you ask me, were 5 years painful? For me, it was a journey. I never felt it like 5 years. When I look back, it really seems like a long time, but when I was doing it, it was as I was just enjoying the process, I guess.
Quite akin to raising a child. That's what a lot of authors say about their books once they finish them.
I believe so. I think aptly put. Aptly put.
So let's talk about sanitation and the Indian mindset. Now, that, from what little I could gather from your book, forms a large part of what you're really talking about in the book. Why do we as a people have this particular mindset, or why does it make our skin crawl when someone talks about gandagi or sanitation or garbage? What is it?
Yeah, it's a fair question, and I think it's sanitation has multiple dimensions, and you just can't solve it by just looking at one dimension and say, let's put toilets and you will resolve the issue, or let's put some people and you will resolve the issue. You can't do that. It's a manifestation of many things. It's a manifestation of how we are structured as a society. It's a manifestation of how we allow ourselves through local governance models and how do we live everything. But the starting point is the question that you've asked: why are we like who we are regarding sanitation? And I think from this is the starting point to say how sanitation has become a mess in India over a period of time. And the reason is that as Indians, as an Indian society, and when I say Indian society, I will treat South Asia, the entire South Asia region. Uh, Over a period of time, and I've sort of documented almost 1600 years of Indian history from the viewpoint of sanitation, and I've concluded that over a period of time, it's the caste system and the way caste system was evolved in the country and how it impacted us, the consuming society, the mainstream society, to develop a skewed mindset towards sanitation is the core of the problem. Okay, so what is the skewed mindset? This skewed mindset is nothing but the fact that sanitation in our minds is an outsourced function. So, quote unquote, the cleaning caste is ascribed to solve all the problems of sanitation. A jamadar will come and clean the house. I'm not supposed to get inside the drain. If a drain is leaking outside my house, I will just call somebody to come. I will just throw the garbage outside. Everything, all this action that we manifests or we see in the mainstream society is a function of this caste system which mentally outsources sanitation. It has not happened anywhere else in the world, surprisingly. And that's the reason why they have been able to sort of address the issue of sanitation more easily. It's not as if the sanitation problem was not a challenge in the clean countries. 100 years back, 150 years back, which I've documented, in just after industrialization, Europe, Paris, London, New York, in all whole of US, Japan, they were very dirty. They faced a lot of issues around sanitation, but they managed to solve it. They managed to apply scientific temperament because they were not guided by this caste system, the hold of caste system that is there. And I think that allows us to mentally outsource everything, to develop a skewed mindset towards sanitation, and and how it manifests in daily lives. You would be surprised that till about 2000, 2002, the subject of sanitation was not even taught in Indian schools.
Yeah.
It was actually Supreme Court's intervention that nudged CBSE to introduce environment science as a subject, and in that it became a subset. So you see, generation has been educated in India without being conditioned to sanitation. We don't have any concept of community service in schools and colleges. We don't actually introduce the subject of sanitation by allowing students or asking students to do things themselves, to clean themselves. All these things are missing, and the starting point is that entire caste system hold, which I have detailed. So I think, in a nutshell, in the interest of time, if I were to say why are we so skewed, uh, it's the play of our mind, which is an outcome of the caste system, which segregates sanitation and all issues around sanitation to think something as an outsourced function. Somebody else will do it. And that's why I don't want to pay for it. That's why I don't want to sort of do it myself. I don't have a community bonding on this issue. I don't include myself or my children to sort of do anything around it. That's a big problem. That's what makes India different
Yes.
from countries, yeah, from rest of the world.
So you brought up an interesting point about educating children about sanitation, which I think is so important, not just in schools, but at home as well. Like
Yeah,
charity
yeah.
starts at home, sanitation is also something that starts at home. So if there was something that you could tell the people who are with us today and watching, uh, what do they tell their children? How do they bring their children into the fold of understanding sanitation? Is it from the basics of cleanliness? How much do you ask a child to do to make him or her aware of how important this is in our lives?
Actually, I would paraphrase that the children today, the generation today, they are far more aware about the issue of sanitation. Our generation is actually a lost cause when it comes to sanitation. So children today are more aware. They are absorb more. They are more sensitive towards it. I have to give it to them. So it's actually the reverse. Children will teach us of how to clean. But as a family, if you were to ask me what are few things that you can do, there are two, three things in my checklist that I always advise households to take up. The first is the virtue of composting. Okay, every household generates wet waste. Okay, and mindlessly we just mix it up with plastic waste and it goes into the municipal services. It just stresses the municipal services existing infrastructure, which is already weak. Try composting at home. Try to take all the wet waste away from municipal services load and see if you can convert it into compost. Use it yourself or just throw it on the ground, in the public ground somewhere, or throw it in the jungles, throw it in wherever you see plants or trees planted in your neighborhood or in your vicinity or in the city. But try composting at home. What it does is that it's an activity. You roll up your sleeves, your children roll up the sleeves, and they do it every day. And you sort of see how composting can become a just like gardening, like you do at home, or anything that you take up as a hobby. See if you can take up composting. There are enough kits available. The second thing that I advise people to do is that learn to segregate waste. Okay, now it sounds simple, but it is not. And I'll give you an example. Most of the segregation sermons that are given to us are segregate waste into dry and wet. What do you mean by dry? What do you mean by wet? Okay. Now, if you go to Sweden, for instance, there are 7 bins in which waste is segregated in Scandinavian countries, not two, 7 bins. They take out glass separately. They take out plastic separately. They take out paper separately. They take out batteries separately. They take out e-waste separately. Then they take out, yeah, wet waste. You can medical waste is separate. So all the razors that you generate and at home, napkins that you soil napkins that you generate at home, this is all medical waste. It's not supposed to go with plastic. A soil napkin takes about 500 years to sort of decompose in landfills. E-waste is all.
There, but you mean like a tissue paper?
Yeah. And same is the case with batteries. Batteries is all used batteries. We just throw it. Learn how to segregate this waste, take it out separately, and try to give it to your local recycler or a local Radivara separately. Heavens won't fall if you don't dispose battery the second day. If you start to aggregate like a piggy bank of some of the waste that does not require daily disposal, at the end of the year you can just dispose in one lump. It's as simple as that. But segregation, what it will do is it will teach you the art of what kind of waste that we generate at home. Children will be aware and parents will be aware. And the third thing that I advise is recycle and reuse. See if you can do recycling and reuse. See if you can extend life of things that you want to dispose. Can it be retrofitted? Can it be extended for this thing? Can you upcycle something? Can you buy something which is made of recycled material? So you have a disposition towards material and recycle economy. I think if you can do these three things, there are no sermons. Don't learn anything. Just start to do these three things. You'll be sorted.
That's a fair point. And very simple things that can actually be incorporated in our daily lives. And I don't think
Yeah.
any of it's difficult because as Indians, I think another tendency that we all have is that we are naturally hoarders. So for us to say that it's difficult for us to keep raddi at home and give it out a year later is quite insensitive to
Yeah.
say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. In fact, in the 70s, 80s, the practice of getting the Raddiwala at home and disposing a lot of things to a Raddiwala was there. I think somewhere in from 90s and 2000 onwards, we've lost that art as we become more of a disposing society or a consuming society. But I think that wisdom need to be brought back, at least within the households, to say that I need to segregate. Every household can just do 6, 7 bins, color coded differently, and use it.
Right. I'm definitely going to try and incorporate that in my home for sure. I pledge. Uh,
Thank you.
let's talk about the next phase. We've spoken about home. Let's step out now and talk about our cities. Do you think Indian cities are designed to be clean? Because no matter what, like for example, I made a trip to Chandigarh from Panchkula for the first time in 3 months a few days ago. The roads were still as dirty. All the drains were filled with grass, and the monsoon has supposedly hit. What is going to happen to sanitation in this country if no one cares?
Yeah. So, there is uh, it's a very important question to understand that sanitation has two aspects. One is what you generate as waste, and as a result, you are unable to manage waste, and that's why you are dirty. The
Yeah.
second aspect is that you actually design something which will always give you a dirty outcome. And the conclusion is that we don't know how to design clean cities. We don't know how to build clean cities. That's a reality. And that's where the issue of urban planning comes in. And why I'm saying so is so that's completely different issue. And it requires a completely different mindset of how do I build my cities that are sustainable and and economically environmentally more friendly and are clean. And it requires a very evolved thinking. It requires a thinking that is empathetic to environment, that is empathetic to stakeholders. Now, I'll give you some examples and some data points to appreciate what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
40% of urban India lives in slums
Right.
or illegal living or ghettos. That's the biggest measure to say that you actually our Indian cities are not designed to be clean. So if 40% of your households actually live in ghettos, just think about how do they access sanitation, how do they access toilets, how do they access bathing, how do they access parking, how do they access daily living, uh, and the entire disposal process of sanitation from the informal living. We have seen the migrant crisis unfold in front of us during the COVID crisis. It is primarily because of informal living is just not sustainable in the times of crisis. Now, we had seen so many migrants vulnerable and desperate walking back home, and many of us in the middle class, we were asking, why are they going? Why can't they live? They live actually in 100 square feet houses, rooms. They're
Literally. Yes.
extremely suffocating rooms. Never six people, members of the family have stayed in those rooms together because they work on rotation shifts. They just come in, crash in, and they go out and work. Now, if you are asking people to actually live in that hellhole and don't go out and observe lockdown conditions, is worse than defying the laws and just walking back home, and that's what they did. So so therefore the question to ask is, uh, how do we approach public housing, how do we approach public health, how do we approach designing of cities? These are exactly the same issues that were addressed in London, that were addressed in Japan. They were also faced with ghettos, they were also faced with slums, and they redid the entire approach to housing. So in England today, there's some concept called council housing or public housing. Our affordable housing policy has not been a success at all. Most of the houses that you see here are middle class houses which are investor led in real estate models. They can't they can't absorb such high population that is trying to urbanize. So the way we allocate land, the way we zone our land in cities, the purpose that we assign land to in the city. Chandigarh was a good example, which attempted to sort of address this issue. But today
Correct.
also Chandigarh is actually a mediocre city.
Yes.
20% of Chandigarh's population today actually lives in slums. So you can see certain good parts of Chandigarh, travel on the road and say, okay, it's nice and all, and you have nostalgia around it. But the reality is that it's not a sustainable city anymore because we have not addressed the issue of public housing. So sanitation and public health therefore becomes an issue, which is what I've talked about in detail. So in my book, there are two aspects. One is about waste collection, waste generation, and how it generates. And sanitation issues. And the second aspect is structurally, how are we designed to address this issue in the first place, which is how we build cities, how we approach urbanization, which is flawed. And I've compared that with how it has happened or evolved in other countries for inspiration, for benchmarks, for insights.
So, what, in your opinion, is the first thing that the government should do to try and correct what we've been doing wrong for over 70 years now?
Yeah. So there's another aspect of so there is one aspect on sanitation that I've talked about, and I think that needs to be the starting point, which is uh, the issue of managing waste and the agency within the government that is assigned to do it. That needs some reconciliation and improvement. So our municipalities are assigned to manage our waste. Our municipalities are not they don't have technical capacity and the financial capacity to manage it. So therefore, they face a lot of challenge in collecting waste and disposing it. That's why you see landfills as the primary method of disposing waste, which is actually banned in Europe since 1980s. So the starting point, therefore, needs to be the reforms that are needed in local municipal bodies. And what are these reforms? These reforms would mean the entire issue of sanitation needs to be priced. There is a cost associated with waste collection, there is a cost associated with waste disposal. It needs to be treated like a utility. So, like you access electricity and you pay for it, and like you access water, you pay for it. Disposing waste also needs to be a paid service, it's a utility. If citizens need to pay for a safe disposal of waste, it's as simple as that, and it's nothing very out of the ordinary. Everybody which is a clean country actually pays for its waste. So like you have a monthly bill of electricity and water, you have a monthly bill for waste disposal. So pricing waste as a utility service, making reforms in municipal bodies that can address this issue. And what I mean by the second part of reforms is that you divide waste collection and waste disposal into two parts, just
Right.
like electricity distribution and electricity generation. So electricity distribution companies actually don't generate electricity, they buy electricity from somewhere. So your municipal bodies will collect waste, they will charge, you will pay, and they will segregate that waste and they will give it to the waste disposal companies, and waste disposable companies will treat it like an infrastructure play, and then they will sort of process it. So you will see incinerators, you would see recycling plants, you will see effluent treatment plants, just as an infrastructure play to emerge in the country. And I think without solving this leg, this needs to be the starting point, which needs to be thought through end to end as this as one part of the reforms that are needed. The second part of the reform is public housing that I talked about, and that's a different issue. Public housing and urban planning, and there are whole set of things that we can do around it.
Do you think that privatization of, let's say, recycling or waste disposal is a good way for the government to go?
Till the time the basics are not defined, privatization will not help. Actually, if you look at most of the municipal corporations, you look at Gurgaon, you look at Chandigarh, you look at Noida, you look at Lucknow, they all try to tie up with some sort of a private operator to dispose waste. Okay, but the pricing issue has not been resolved. The legislative issue has not been resolved. The regulatory issue has not been resolved. The emission norms are not been defined. So what you're doing is you are unable to do it because you have not defined this. You're asking somebody else to do it. He also faces the same problems. So privatization without legislation and without reforms in municipal governance will not solve the problem of sanitation. I am not too. I don't have any preference for a private player or a public player. In fact, BHEL can equally do it as a infrastructure play. BHEL as a public entity can easily sort of be thought about or can be imagined as a waste disposal entity. And there's so many other public sector companies that can be looked at, provided the regulation and the framework is in place. And I think that's where the hard work is. That's where consensus is needed. That's where, and it's a state subject actually. If you come to think of it, it's not necessarily a central subject. So state governments can actually take a lead in it. I'll give you an example. In the case of Punjab, I think there's a green shoot. Last year, I remember there was a visit of the Swedish royal couple to India. and they came to Punjab, and there is a pilot project running where between it's an MOU between state government of Punjab and a Swedish company called Bio and Dave, and they are doing this pilot project to incinerate agriculture waste and convert it into biofuels. And Bio and Dave, which is a public, it's a Swedish company that pioneers in incinerating agriculture waste. They are trying to sort of put together a pilot in place. So similar experiments are happening in MP, and Indore is a good example we keep hearing about as a clean city. So it's actually a state subject. If states can undertake some of these reforms and some success stories can emerge, Sikkim is a great example of what state can do on its own. One of the cleanest states in the country, one of my favorite states, of how they have gone about addressing sanitation.
That's perfect. I think we've managed to touch upon various aspects, and like everything else, it's been beautiful because we started at home and we've talked about what the center and state can do as well. So before we point fingers at what the government is doing or failing to do, I think a good place to start would be at home when each of us does our bit going
Yes,
forward.
yes, yes.
Before we wrap up, I see time is flying. I'd like to ask you five really quick questions with five quick, spontaneous, and honest answers from you.
Sure, sure.
In your research for your book, which country, in your opinion, has the ideal sanitation model?
Sweden. Sweden is a great benchmark for me.
Fantastic. What do you think is the single biggest factor that contributes to India's sanitation woes?
Single, skewed mindset.
If you were given the power to change one thing about sanitation in India, what would it be?
I will just put all the school students in through a what I call a community project of doing volunteering work on sanitation, of cleaning roads, of going into projects of taking up volunteering work uh, around the community that they live in some form of either waste segregation or waste collection. Just allow asking them to roll up their sleeves and volunteer for this. Only
I
then
hope
can only then can you understand the issue that the sanitation workers face day in and day out. It is so challenging. It's so mind deliberating work. But I think volunteering is one thing that I'll do.
I hope there's a lot of teachers and a lot of people from schools watching this, because I really hope that once life comes back to what we are accustomed to as normal, this becomes the norm.
Yeah, yeah.
Two fun questions for you. I know you've been in the management industry a long while. So if you had to choose management consultancy or authorship, your life choice.
Or authorship between the two. Oh my God. uh,
Okay, there seems to have been a problem with the connection again. I hope we can get Mr. Ankur back. While we're waiting for him to come back, I'd like to introduce our second guest for the day, who will be joining us in just a couple of minutes. Simran Singh is a young author from the city of Amritsar. She is one book old, waiting on her second to be published, and already well on her way writing her third book. When I got to know her, there was one thing that she told me about which resonated with me so deeply. She said that there is nothing that makes more sense to her than the power of the universe and the way it conspires. And when we spoke about that, I knew we were going to get on like a house, like a house on fire. Hi Simran, long life.
Hello, hi.
So I just got to hear from Mr. Bisen that unfortunately his electricity has gone in Gurgaon. I
Okay,
hope my question didn't stump him too much, or the electricity. Hopefully, we'll be able to maybe have him back towards the end of this session, and we'll finish up
right.
his session. But now we can start ours with you. I was just introducing you to the audience and telling them about how we share our love for the universe and its conspiracies. So, good
Right.
to have you, Simran.
That's
Thank
a
you.
that's how we connected immediately.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be part of anything that Chandigarh Literary Society is organizing. So I'm so delighted to be here.
Thank you, Simran.
In fact,
So,
before we begin, yeah, please say.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that before we begin, I actually want to take this opportunity to, let everyone know that how incredible it was being part of Literati in 2019, being an author there, in the panel speaking, and the environment there, the energy there is unparalleled. Lake Club being, one beautiful venue. So the energy it radiates, I think it brings the best out of authors. So I loved that experience, and I think anyone who loves books and has love for words should experience the experience called literati. So I want to thank Vivek sir, Sumita ma'am, and the entire team for creating something so magical and doing what they are doing. It's like amazing. So I'm delighted to be part of it yet again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Chandigarh Literary Society sends you big hugs.
Right back, one hug from my side, big one. Thank you.
So, I was just talking to our viewers about how you are one book published, second book on the anvil, third book already being written. Exciting times for you. And
Yes, very exciting because honestly, I would have published the second one if the lockdown had not happened. Because I was looking at, publishing it somewhere in March or beginning of April. Then the lockdown happened, but I was miserable for a while until I came to the fact that acceptance is everything and the show must go on. So that means let's write another book. And I got turned to writing my third one.
that's fantastic. So, Hi Rabba became Hi Rabba. Huh? Good opportunity you convert. So,
Yes.
talking about your third book, let's start from there because we've reached that point now. You told
Right.
me title But One Sunday because that's the day Janata curfew came down and the lockdown shockdown actually began, is what you
Yeah,
told.
literally. It
So,
was like a, yes.
sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 please continue. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to ask you, so what is your book centered around? Because with your first book, Does Love Ever End, you announced yourself as an author of romance.
Right.
So,
You know,
what can we expect with But One Sunday?
so I never really planned to write romance. I grew up reading Ruskin Bond and Ed Little like all of us do, and then I was reading a lot of Agatha Christie. And by the time I was in high school, I was preparing for civil services, so I was just reading those fact books, GK ones. So I never really read romance in my life. And it's that the irony is that when I started writing, I found myself writing romance. So it was literally what my heart asked me to write. I just wrote. It was never planned. Then Hairaba happened. Hairaba has a lot of humor in it along with romance. It talks about the 21st century women, the choices they make. So it's one mad fun ride. And I never knew I could write humor. So it was like with every book, I'm discovering myself. So, and now the third one, let's talk about But One Sunday. So that's the day when we woke up one fine morning and a pause button was pressed and everything stopped. So I think the idea of But One Sunday, the reason I chose to start writing it was because I thought as a writer, it's my responsibility to record what I'm feeling right now and what everyone else is feeling right now. Though we all are apart, but the emotions that we all are going through in this phase are very, very similar. And for, something that needs to be recorded in history, for us to, go back and see what we felt, how we came out of it, and also for the future generations to know that in this pandemic, what this generation was like, what we felt, and how we came out of it. Some changed, some things completely changed, and some things in us just still the same. So that's the idea of But One Sunday. It talks about the pain of the migrants. It talks about so many people facing financial crisis like never before. It talks about the changing love equations. The interesting part is that I see so many love stories around me even in this phase. So that makes me believe that, even in agony, even in pain, love is one emotion that surpasses all emotions. Whatever it may be, we want to be loved, we want to feel love, and love is one thing that just makes us feel okay. So the changing love equations, people who had never connected earlier are now connecting. Like for instance, people working in the same office, never, realizing what they could mean to each other. Now when they work from home, a love story begins. So I have witnessed such incredible stories around me. So the changing love equations are a major part of the stories are a major part of part one Sunday, and along with that, there's a little bit of humor because we can always do with some humor. In fact, if I can read a little bit about the Migrants Pain, which I wrote maybe later,
Sure. I think we
that's
have
how
a
it is.
people would be more than excited to hear from you. So let's do it right now.
Okay, so as for the migrants' pain, that is one thing that really broke my heart in that phase when it all began, and it's going on even now. So it made me write a piece which was very, very difficult to write because my heart was breaking as I wrote it. But then I was feeling so miserable about it when I saw those thousands of images of those migrants just being on the road. I felt their pain, I understood their pain, and what was more heartbreaking was so many people around saying that they are being stupid, they are breaking a lockdown. But I think sitting in an air-conditioned room and commenting is easy, but knowing what someone is going through, I'm sure you'd agree to that. There's a lot of empathy involved in that process. So it broke me, and I'm sure it broke so many people seeing them like that. So this piece was a result of what I felt during that time when it all began.
Fantastic. Listen to what you
Yes. So that evening, that evening, when I saw the images of thousands of migrants coming out on the roads, I slept very uneasy. I slept very uneasy. The unrest echoed of the pain inside them. It was all about uncertainty that they were living with. They were just saying that they want to go home. In all of them, there was a man who wanted to go back home to his pregnant wife. And maybe someone who wanted to go back to his young son who was just asking him to come back home. And maybe someone who had a mother he didn't know would live long enough to even see the end of this pandemic, who didn't even know his mother would live long enough to see the end of this pandemic. They were being called stupid. They were being called the idiots breaking the lockdown. And as I slept so uneasy, I came to understand what I was feeling. I came to understand what I was feeling. I was feeling for them. I was understanding their pain. When everything around them was being portrayed as so uncertain, why were we expecting them to just sit? Did anyone tell them that everything will be okay? Did anyone promise them that no virus can stay forever? Did they hear any comforting words? Did they hear any comforting words? They didn't. For days, they were just seeing images of hospitals and patients. They weren't seeing hope. They weren't seeing hope. So that's how it is. So,
another
yeah.
powerful item which has managed to change the mood of this discussion really heavily. So
Because like how we were discussing, it's so heartbreaking, all of this, that this virus has become a stigma in front of our own eyes. And there's so much silence about it. Like, of course it's an infectious thing, so we have to be careful, we are staying indoors, we are taking precautions. But it is so sad it's become a stigma. Because I wake up and I get WhatsApp forwards wherein people are sharing images of this person living here is corona positive. They are literally sharing Ritu Aadhaar cards of people who are corona positive. And people, when they come back home, they are cured. The people around them look at them with suspicion. I know stories wherein a milkman won't go and give milk to a particular house because someone there was corona positive. So I'm just, of course we have to be careful about the virus, but what I fear is that I just don't want that when this pandemic ends, of course it will very soon, we've forgotten how to love. as mankind, it's not we've forgotten how to love, and we need to teach ourselves how to love again, because we need to coexist. And I'm not really saying any person is bad. Even the people who are sending these messages are not bad people. It's just that at times you don't know what you're doing. So it would be, everyone should ensure that people around us, we are telling them what the right way is. We are apart, but we can be together. Our hearts can still be connected. Hearts are meant to love, so they can just love. So, that's a lot what But One Sunday is made of.
Speaking about love, even when you read your passage on migrants, the
Sorry,
undertone,
I didn't get you.
speaking about love, when you
Yeah.
read your passage that you had written on
Yes, yes.
and them going home, the underlying emotion through it all is love. You want to go home because you love your family. Your
Absolutely.
child wants you back because he loves you and wants you to be safe. You want to go see your wife who's pregnant because you love her and you love that child she's carrying. So, no matter what we are going through as the world, like you said, we're going through it together. And
Right.
love is literally just moving mountains, if in this case it was mountains of people.
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. It's actually ultimately it all comes to love. We want we want to be with our loved one. We want to feel loved, and love is something that's again surpassing everything else. So you've said it actually very right here. Totally agree with you. It's our hearts that just want to be loved. Like people saying in this generation that our hearts don't love like that. We hear it so often, but actually it's like that God's factory of manufacturing hearts has not changed. Our hearts are still the same even in this generation, and everyone around wants to feel loved. So absolutely.
So, talking about love, it's something that is a subject that is so deep and so frivolous at the same time, right? You
Right.
have people like Rumi who've written about love so many hundreds of years ago, unable to understand what it's all about. And we have Twitter poets today talking about love, some making it sound so flippant, some making it sound so deep. You're a young girl, like really a young girl, to talk about this subject like love the way you do. How? Where does the realization or the wisdom come from?
I've always tried to understand everything very deeply. I've never let go of things. If it's my heart talking, I don't just, let go of what it's feeling. I try to face what it's feeling. I try to understand what it's feeling. I never try to get lost in the mad rush that I forget to talk to myself. I try to understand what I'm feeling. I face it without fears. If it's an unsaid inside me, I face it. I don't try to just, let go day after day, that it ultimately just melts away and I don't face what I was feeling. So I think it's the honesty to pause, stop, and, just feel what I'm feeling, that makes me understand my emotions better and makes me understand the emotions of people around me better. So that makes me realize that emotions have to be understood. Our stories may be different, but the emotions in them are more or less the similar. So just the acceptance of what my heart is feeling, and not questioning my heart too much and just listening to it, accepting what I'm feeling, accepting what people around me are feeling, being sensitive towards them, sensitive towards my own feelings. I think if I can write romance at this age, like I started writing it at the age of 22, the strength to write it, because I never planned to write romance, but when I started writing it, it's so heartwarming when people say that they connect with it so well. Like I wake up and there are thousands of messages, hundreds of people reaching out to me and telling me that how some quote or something from Does Love Ever End just changed the way they think about life, and they found strength in it. So there's nothing more heartwarming than that, and that makes me want to believe in love more and makes me want to understand the world better. And with what wisdom I get, I try to do the best.
That's amazing. So what I gather from there is two things like really resonated with me. One was that love has to start with yourself. So there is no love if there's no self love.
Absolutely. I
And
totally agree.
the second thing that you were talking about quite strongly was empathy. So do you think that love and empathy are intertwined and one cannot be without the other?
Yes, they are more or less. You're right. See, when it comes to loving yourself, it is because in any relationship, if you don't love yourself enough, you cannot give love to your partner. And empathy of what the other person is feeling is so important. You cannot make a home with someone else if you don't have the feeling of empathy inside you. So self love and empathy are important to each other, and they do go together to build a home, to make something stay, and to make something stable. So yes, empathy and loving yourself are important, and loving yourself is extremely important. Like, you have to accept yourself, forgive yourself for your flaws, because we all are flawed in some way or the other. Accepting your flaws, loving, and being forgiving towards yourself, and being forgiving towards the other person is just so important. Only then you can build something that is strong, powerful, something that stays. So yes.
So, in the current scenario that we're all in, personally, I think empathy has become such a necessary but such a forgotten virtue. So,
Absolutely.
I would really like to take take this point. I mean, get as many people to take this point home as possible. That especially now, it's so important to be empathetic, not just to, let's say, migrants, because you can see their pain, but also
Right.
to the people you love, and most importantly, to yourself. I think a lot of us are being very hard on ourselves with the way the situation is. Work has come to a standstill for a lot of people. Productivity levels have fallen. Having been confined to home, you find excuses to not do anything but just sit around doing nothing. And you're caught in a cycle of uh, inactivity and then guilt, which leads to more laziness and more inactivity. And I think the only way to kind of break that cycle is through empathy. So I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's something that really needs to be talked about and really needs to be heard and understood by all of us at this point in time. You write a lot
Absolutely.
about this kind of stuff on your Twitter handle and your Instagram, which has a very interesting name. And you told me the other day when we spoke, the journey from tequila words to Hairabba has been quite something. So, what has this journey been from tequila words to Hairabba? Did tequila words come up, or was that born before Does Love Ever End, or did it happen after? Were you always a scribbler who became an author, or were you an author who became a scribbler? What was it like?
So, my story is different because I'll tell you something. Mostly people have this thing that I wanted to do something, and people around me were telling me otherwise. So I had to fight with everyone and chase my dream. In my case, I had to fight with myself because I had a very clear plan all my life. I wanted to be a bureaucrat. I wanted to pay for the civil services exam, and that was my plan. Like, there was never anything else that could come in the way. So I was always found with textbooks, and I was all ready, to appear for my exams, my prelims. Yeah, before that, actually, I was studying economics, and I had taken, which I think I should bring forward, because I had taken economics. The only reason I took it, a person like me who should have actually studied literature, was studying economics because I scored very good in economics in grade 12. So everyone was like, "You are meant to do economics," and I believed everyone, and I took economics. So when I started studying, I found it a very dull, very boring subject. It was just not my thing. I became very miserable in that phase of my life. So that's the time this first bencher in school became a last bencher, in university. I would sit on the last bench during my second, third year, and I would scribble poetry. So that I thought was just a catharsis back then. I didn't really think it's in the story inside me that needs to be written. I just thought I'm doing catharsis and it's working good for me because I'm finding myself in a much better space. So it's good. So after my graduation completed, I continued preparing for civil services. Everything was going perfect until I realized that there's this story raging inside me that needs to be written. It was literally like fighting with me that, just write me. So my story asked me to write it. So I thought that, my preparation is pretty much done. So I'll just take a 1 month break and I'll write a book, because I had never written one. So I thought it probably takes a month to write one. I started writing, and it took me, of course, 1 year to write it. That's the process of it. But when I started writing, there was no looking back. I was like, this is where I want to be. This is the space where I belong. So it was not easy, because all my life I had my decisions very clear. So it was not a very comfortable space to just say that now I'm changing my decision, because I had sleepless nights. Like, how you are so clear, it's just a phase. I would tell myself and I'll get over it. But then I realized nothing makes me more happy in between the pages of my diary where I write. This is my happiest space. This is where I belong. But it wasn't easy. I had to fight with myself. Then I realized that, just because I have lived with a wrong decision for, say, not a wrong decision, like a decision that doesn't belong to me for years, that doesn't mean I need to continue doing it for a lifetime just because I took that decision once. If I have realized what makes me happy, I have to be ready to, make that change in my life. I'm nowhere telling anyone that change is not scary. Let me tell everyone watching, change is very, very scary. I was very, very scared. But change is scary only until you don't just embrace it, or just, take that one step. The moment I made the decision, I was not afraid anymore. It was I was so happy, I forgot to be afraid. But yes, until I couldn't decide, I had sleepless nights, questioning myself every day. This is no, you can do both the things together. Of course, I could have done that too. But then I realized that I just want to be here. This is where I belong. So why do I appear for the exam and cause confusion in my life? If I know what I want, and at this age I've got to know that. So let's not embrace, the process of doing both things. So there were these very strong decisions I had to make at that point in my life. And I think those strong decisions, those very, very big decisions, have made me the person I am. In my entire writing journey, I've had to make big, big decisions. And success doesn't really come easy. I don't know. Some people say, some people are lucky. Luck is important, but it's just a part of it. There were struggles, and struggles. So I think those struggles, those challenges, have made me the person I am today. So I mean, I'm glad all those things came my way, because the person I am today is because of them. So that's how it happened. Tequila Bird started. Yes, Tequila Bird happened before Does Love Ever End? And I have seen it grow literally. When I started my Facebook page, I had like 100 followers, and I was like, wow, 100 people care about what I write. And then to see it grow to thousands and thousands, now it has a following of 24K, my Facebook page, and seeing all of that has made me realize that don't stop, be persistent. I kept writing, and people were connecting every day, and they were just loving what I was doing, because I was doing it with my heart. So give your best. There's no shortcut to success, but do it with your heart. And then Does Love Ever End happened. So I was ready to publish it. When I started writing it, it was just a story inside me. And then the journey of Does Love Ever End began. And I can't wait for people to join for the Hyderabad ride now, when everything is okay and we can just publish it.
I'm sure we're gonna love that ride. Did the universe speak to you and help you make that change?
Universe really helped me. Yes. I became
I want you to tell people how, because I would love for more people to believe in the
right.
power of the universe. There is a very strong selfish intent in my asking you this question and wanting you to detail it for everyone who's watching. How do
You
you
are
learn?
definitely friends with the universe.
How, how do you learn to listen to the universe?
So, I'll tell you how it started. I would always tell people around me that, the universe listens to me. And people would tell me, Simran Singh, there are 7 billion people. What is with the universe listening to you? So I would tell everyone the universe has space for everyone. It can function according to 7 billion people all at once. All we need to do is allow it and go and claim our space. It has space for every friendship. So we have to become friends with it. Just go and claim that space. I would feel that, that the day I learned to believe in myself, the universe learned to believe in me. The day I knew, okay, I deserve this. I have to get it. I was so powerful about what I was felt so powerful while saying it. I didn't leave the universe with an option. It became my best friend and it believed in me. And then we've been the best of friends ever since. And it's one friendship I treasure. So I think
So
becoming, yes.
it's come full circle back to self-love, huh? That's where this starts to.
Yes, exactly right. Because I loved myself and what I was doing, I had faith in it that the universe was not left with an option. We don't have to leave the universe with an option. It's warm and it's a giver, but it's a giver only if we are believers. So yeah,
So
believe in it enough. That's what I would tell people watching it. Just believe in it so much, become friends with it, and the universe will function according to you. It really can function according to you. You just have to give the signal and everything else falls into place. I promise. Experience tells me. I feel it. Ritu is someone who's felt it. So, we are people sitting in front of you who know what it does.
you know, there are times, like you said, have enough faith in it and it will give back to you. As a pessimist, if I were to ask you, how would I have faith in it if it wasn't giving me what I wanted?
Faith is something that I would say faith is something that should go on. We make a prayer, we don't get something from God, and there's someone who might say that I'm not never going to ask God again for it. Then you make and then there'll be someone who will make a prayer every single day, and that person gets what that person really wants. So it's the faith. Faith is one thing that cannot be for a short while. Universe will test you. It will test you. It will check if you believe in it enough. Universe will do that check on you. If you believe in it enough, you'll make your prayer stronger every day. Your wish for it will be stronger every day rather than giving up that, oh, I'm in that category, nothing works in my life. I can just sit and crib and feel bad about myself. Or we can be people who say that this is what I want. If not today, I'll pray tomorrow. If not tomorrow, I'll pray again. It may take a year, it may take two, but one day it will happen. So one day is a very, very big hope. I know someone who fell in love recently, and that person would never believe in love, would never believe in love. And I would keep telling that person that, believe in love enough, believe in love enough. And that person would be like, no, I am not meant for love. I was like, how can you know that? You tell the universe you deserve to be loved. And keep telling every day, love will come to you. And that person now has a very beautiful love story. So it was just because that person didn't stop believing in the universe, love walked into that person's life. So I have witnessed, things like that happening.
That's absolutely fantastic, and I'm so glad we got to talk about something that has always been such an important part of my life. I'm glad I had you to share it with and take it out to so many people. Uh, I'd like to ask you a few short, quick questions, super spontaneous answers from you before we wrap up for the day.
Right.
First, your top three favorite books of all time.
Top three favorite books, okay. I would say that's a tough question because I fall in love with books. I don't read romance, but because I never read, because ever since I started writing, honestly, I didn't read romance because I never wanted my writings to be influenced ever. So I've top three books if I have to. I've read a lot of Ruskin Bond, so I think all of his books. I just cannot choose one.
Okay.
He creates magic. I'll say just Ruskin Bond. He's himself so powerful that one book cannot define him. Then yes, I love to read. Some of my favorite ones. Okay, this has to be quick. Mm, I'll say Secret by Rhonda Byrne. Very powerful book.
Yeah.
The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. Then the third one would be a book that has stayed with me. I think I'll go with these two. These two have really stayed with me. Like Ruskin Bond as an author and this book by Rhonda Byrne. And the third one,
Should I
I
add
think
a third?
something, yeah, please.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho.
Yes, that's a lovely one. Absolutely.
The universe
Paulo's,
conspires to do everything you
yes,
want to help enough other people get what they want.
right. Because
That's how
the books I read, I just fall in love with them. And to just pick one is like a thing that I have to think about a lot.
Okay. One line that you've read that's left an indelible mark on who you are.
A line that I read that left the universe. No, wait, one line. Okay, it would be fall in love, and there were just these two words that I read somewhere. There were these two words that just said accept yourself. I read it in a book many years ago, and there were these two words on the first page, and it was just written accept yourself. I can't recall the name of the book. It just said accept yourself. And I was very young when I read it, and ever since then I understood what acceptance is. So accept yourself.
If your life were a movie, what would it be titled?
If my life was a movie. Hi Rabba.
I knew that was coming somewhere.
Hi Rabba. I'll have me on the cover of the, at least on the poster with that Hi Rabba emoticon and Hi Rabba. I'll be leaving the world saying a lot of Hi Rabba things.
Fantastic. The soundtrack of your life would be.
Soundtrack of my life. I'm such a music lover. One soundtrack. Theme for a Dream.
It's one of my latest favorites. Just by chance.
Really, is it? So, in my first book, so like a couple has a song, So in my first book, Alia and Arjun, this is their song, Theme for a Dream.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question for you. If you could choose to be any character in any book that was ever written, who would you choose?
I would choose any book ever written. I would like to live the life of. I would want to be. I would want to be Mr. Darcy, not a girl. I would want to be Mr. Darcy with a little twists and turns and change his personality, and with those twists and turns, be in a movie. I found his character very fascinating. I would want him Mr. Darcy.
You make a very interesting Mr. Darcy for sure. Thank you, Simran. I see that, my God, it's already time for us to
Oh
say
my
goodbye.
God, yeah.
It's been
Having a great conversation.
talking to you, and hopefully we can do this again more sometime.
Yes, I would love to.
Thank you for taking the time and being with us. And
Thank you for having me here. I'm very happy being here, and the conversation with you was brilliant, and it just floats. I'm very glad to be here.
thank you for echoing my faith in the universe. I think
Yeah, the universe is listening to us.
Yes. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay.
We'll now like to call Mr. Ankur Bisen back. His power is back, and so is he. So if we can have him on again, so we can finish that chat. Hi, sir. Good to see you
Hi,
again.
Ritu. I'm sorry, the because of the electricity issue, I couldn't complete the conversation.
No problem at all. I'll go right back to where we stopped, like we never took a break. So I was asking you, you're not wriggling out of that question. Management or authorship, which one would you choose?
No, any day now, authorship. It's quite a rewarding. When I say rewarding, it's not about monetary rewards I'm talking about here, but uh, the, the the journey, the inspiration as an avenue to sort of to express yourself, to discover so many things. So I think writing is, as a habit, I would also recommend people to write, because writing is also a great way to learn, a great way to untangle your mind, because you are all constantly faced with so many things now, trying to make meaning out of it. I think writing is the best form to get clarity in life per se. So authorship.
Fantastic. And the last question I have for you would be, is there any Bollywood movie that you identify with that echoes the sentiment of your book?
Uh, echoes the sentiment of my book. Not necessarily a movie that I like, but yeah. So that is Jaane Bhi Do Yaro. Okay.
So,
In fact, I've mentioned Jaane Bhi Do Yaro in the book.
mhm.
It captures all the trials and tribulations of an urban middle class, of a country in transition, of an urban sort of struggle, uh, corruption, urbanization, failure, so many things, local governance. It captures everything. So I think Janavi Do Yaro is the best expression of the book.
That's fantastic. And I also got to hear that your book has been picked up and is going to hit the silver screen soon.
Uh,
Is it? Is it? No.
no,
Or
not that I'm aware of.
I thought I heard it somewhere.
No,
Okay.
no, no.
Fantastic.
Which
Would you ever write, let's say, a script for the screen now that we know that you've chosen authorship? Is that a direction you'd like to go down? Because I saw
uh,
your eyes when I said that. So
no, 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 not. I don't know. There's so many things. There's so many moving pieces right now. Um, and because you forced me for a choice, I did that as an end state. But probably not in near future where you can just give up everything and go for authorship. There are other priorities to take care of as well. So I think I'll just continue with the status quo, take as much writing assignments as much as I can, and pursue that authorship in that form. So I keep writing articles. I'll continue to do that. Probably I'll explore another idea for another book, and see where it goes.
I
Take it one
hope,
step at a time.
because I think this was a really brave step and something that, like I said at the very beginning, something we all needed to hear and become aware of. So again, thank you very much for bringing it alive through your book. Thank you for
So
giving
no,
us.
pleasure is all mine, Ritu. I am always up for any platform where I can communicate the thoughts and the ideas and the urgency of the issue at hand. So the platform that you provided, the questions that you constructed, that provoked me to sort of bring out all the messages that I wanted to communicate with the audience here. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for your time, sir. It was lovely chatting with you.
Bye bye.